You talking about football?
Yeah, but NFC North. Then let's talk football.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Headed North, an NFC North podcast, and I'm your host, D-Tron. And this week, we are discussing running backs. There's been a lot of news about the running back situation in the NFL. Not the NFC North necessarily, but definitely in the NFL. And because of that, I want to take a look at some of the top numbers in the NFL and where some of the players who should be ranked on that list from the NFC North currently reside. And then we've got a couple of hot takes coming off of First Take on ESPN. I can't believe someone actually said that Jordan Love is the best quarterback in the NFC North. Like, that's just really hard to believe. We're going to jump into that in just a little bit. And we're also going to talk about a quote coming out of Minnesota. Someone's happy that someone else ain't here. All of that and more. But first, I'd like to tell you guys about our sponsor. Our sponsor for the day is offrackshop.com. Offrackshop.com is an online thrift store. They have men and women's clothing. They have accessories, shoes, and more. If you haven't already, please head over to offrackshop.com and shop their huge selection of over 300 items. If you do, use the code in the description or in our link to get 15% off your complete order at offrackshop.com. All right, that's it for the intro. Let's talk running backs. Now, as you are probably aware, the running back situation in the NFL is one that is highly charged right now. I might even consider it the great revolt of running backs in 2023. You've got three of the top running backs in the game right now: Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, and Tony Pollard, who are all coming up on contract negotiations and have all had that franchise tag slapped on their back. So what do? You've got a couple of options if you're players. Saquon's not going to training camp. I don't know if Josh Jacobs and Tony Pollard will, but the big issue for the running backs are they get paid poorly, and they are one of the most churned positions in the NFL. Running backs come and go, and that might play into a bit of why they are considered underpaid or paid less than most people, which, by the way, I was reading an article. The running back position average pay is like 17th on a list of 20 different positions. They really are only better than like punters, kickers, and fullbacks. It's wild. I know. I wouldn't expect that on average pay, but I guess that's how it goes when you're a running back. But there are players who are challenging that, namely Saquon, Josh Jacobs, and Tony Pollard are really trying to push the narrative that, hey, we're not getting paid what we should get paid. And there's been a ton of support from other NFL players to have their back. Even top paid players like Christian McCaffrey has got in and talked about, hey, some of these players being underpaid and how the teams definitely got to find a way to get these guys their money. Now, with all that being said, let's talk top 10 running backs in the NFL. And I'm going to tie this into my NFC North because I know that's why you're here. So, looking at top 10 running backs, if you're just talking about guaranteed cash in 2023, you're going to get rookie contracts that are important. So at least the first one is Bijan Robinson getting $13 million, Christian McCaffrey with 12, Alvin Kamara with 11. Aaron Jones falls fourth on that list. Now Aaron Jones is going to make $10.9 million, so basically $11 million this year for the Green Bay Packers. Certainly one of the best running backs in the NFL, and between him and Dillon, they probably have the best two-man backfield in most of the NFL, honestly. But Aaron Jones was originally slated to make more than that. He was originally slated to make $16 million this year, which would have put him highest cash earnings for this year for any running back. But before free agency, Aaron Jones took a pay cut. He went from 16 mil to 11 mil. Now, I was thinking, originally I talked about this story a couple weeks back, I was thinking that Aaron Jones did this because he really loves Green Bay and he really wants to be a part of this winning organization, or this organization where he spent a lot of his career, I think all of his career. But then I got to thinking more about this. Aaron Jones might have been looking at self-preservation. If he's due $16 million and he doesn't take that pay cut, he could find himself like Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, or Leonard Fournette, and find himself a Pro Bowl running back getting cut or released by his team when it's that time. So Aaron Jones taking a pay cut was probably as much about self-preservation in that role because he understands the climate, the landscape of running backs in the league. He's no fool. So that $16 million, putting him at the top of cash earnings for 2023, would have put a target on his back. And certainly I don't know Aaron Jones, but I've got to believe that he considered that, along with the idea of staying in Green Bay, as factors for why he agreed for that pay cut. So Aaron Jones is number 4. Then you got Nick Chubb, who's getting 10.8. You got Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, that's at 7. Joe Mixon is getting 10 million. And then just below Joe Mixon, there is a 3-way tie for 10th place. All 3 of the people that we were talking about, or that I was talking about at the beginning of the episode. That's Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, and Tony Pollard. All 3 of them are tied for 10th, making 10 mil, and 10 million. They're all getting that same contract. It's coming off of their rookie contract. They want to get paid. And now they've had this franchise tag slapped on them, and it's going to make them not very happy with the organizations that they're a part of, because you want to feel valued. And I think that's part of it, is that running backs are starting to feel like they have just they're being thrown away. They're getting beat up. They're getting through their rookie contract. They're having impact. And then organizations aren't trying to pay them for what they've accomplished. They're trying to pay them for what they think they still have in the tank. If you're paying Saquon for what you think he's still got in the tank, you give him all the money he's requesting, because he's made your organization significantly better. I would have paid Saquon before I would have paid Daniel Jones. And I'm sure Daniel Jones is a fine football player. But there's no way that you don't pay the person who has literally produced all of it for you. He runs the ball. He catches the ball. He's the reason why you got to the playoffs. Saquon should be getting paid. Josh Jacobs, 2-time rushing champion. Like Tony Pollard coming off a good year. I feel more strongly about Josh Jacobs and Saquon than I do about Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard had a really good year last year, very productive, but coming off an injury, I don't know if I'm going to give him max dollar, so I can see why the Cowboys sort of held out on him. But I mean, he deserves to get paid, especially if you're going to let go of Zeke. If you're going to let go of Zeke, you need to give me the money unless you got some kind of grand plan for what you're going to do next. All right, so now we're talking about top paid for this year. So that's the top 10 paid. If you look at complete contract values, right? So this is all, so I forgot to mention that all of this data is coming from Logan Reardon. He wrote up an article June 20th, actually, talking about all of the things that are happening in these NFL contract disputes and then who the top players are. So that's where I'm pulling that information. I want to make sure Logan gets his proper dues here. So then the next thing you want to look at is like total contract value. So for that total contract value, top 4, Kamara, getting a total of 5 years, 75. McCaffrey getting 4 years, 64. Henry getting 4 years, 50. And then tied at 4th is Aaron Jones again, 4 years, 48. And Joe Mixon, 4 years, 48. The rest, Nick Chubb, Sanders, Eckler, who, man, if you talk about a running back that is overworked and underpaid, Austin Eckler is probably like the poster child for this. He's on a 4-year, $24.5 million deal, and Austin Eckler has been exceedingly effective at his job and doing it all and not complaining. And I'm surprised that the Chargers haven't been quicker to pay him bigger bucks to keep him there. They actually had him out shopping the market trying to see where he can go. But again, running backs have a really tough time getting those big money contracts after they've put in the work for 3, 4, 5 years. But you can see we're not talking about any of the other organizations when it comes to these running backs. If you think about the Lions just got rid of Swift. He's in Philadelphia now. He was the big money guy and brought in Montgomery, and then they went and got Gibbs as a rookie who's going to get a guaranteed contract. If you look at Chicago Bears, David Montgomery is gone. They don't have sort of the top tier running back, especially when you got your quarterback who does a lot of the running for you. That takes away some of those carries from that Chicago running back room, which they got some new players in there. They're going to certainly have to figure out the percent of carries per player, but that's not going to get any of them in that top money category. And then you think about Minnesota, They're a prime example of what happens to running backs after they feel like they've used you up. Dalvin Cook is now still searching for a team. I'm certain that he's going to land on a team, but Dalvin Cook is an example of he was a Pro Bowl running back. He gave you multiple seasons of 1,000 yards, and then just like that, they move on to Matson. Running backs have been getting raw deals, and please don't be over there talking to the radio saying, oh, these guys are making millions of dollars. Certainly they are. I'm not saying that they're at the bottom rung of pay in society. I'm talking about pay in the NFL and how they are valued in their jobs. I'm sure you want to be valued in your job. They do too. So I support what's going on with running backs, but I also understand this is a business. So these teams are making business decisions. Aaron Jones made a business decision to take that pay cut. Minnesota Vikings made a business decision to let go of Dalvin Cook when they knew that they could sign Matson for a longer contract and pay him less than Dalvin Cook. But with that said, revolts like this often lead to other things. You're going to start to see these contracts drop for some of these higher end running backs, or you're going to start to see running backs really holding out. If you start to see running backs holding out, game planning for the season, game planning how you're going to proceed through training camp and into preseason is going to get really interesting. Some of those running back battles during preseason may actually end up playing a very significant role in what happens in the actual season if they don't get these deals worked out. So that's my rundown on the running back situation, which honestly has just been at the top of my mind for most of this week and last week because it's such a prevalent story in the NFL and honestly has been that way for a long time. But I'm glad that there's some players who are really stepping up to focus on how this is impacting them and the other players who are eventually going to have to come up on contract negotiations after them. Even players with like top end money like Christian McCaffrey has come out in support of what these other running backs are doing. And he's got like the most guaranteed money in his contract, which is something like $38 million over the life of his contract. That's a lot of money. But again, you see this solidarity happening with the running backs. You don't see as much of that happening in the North because those aren't the same top tier running backs that are in this discussion. But certainly in a few years from now, Gibbs is probably going to be looking at his contract, if he performs well, going to be looking at his contract thinking, okay, what next? And hopefully there's a blueprint that have been laid out by some of these guys like Saquon and Josh Jacobs to help them with getting what they feel like is owed to them once you've already put in some work and shown your ability on the field. All right, so we are off the topic of running backs, and that is the majority of what we're going to talk about today is running backs. But I did have a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. A hot take from First Take, Mike Tannenbaum, which you may or may not know him, but he guest stars on First Take occasionally. He was asked a question on the show about who's the best quarterback in the NFC North. And his response was Jordan Love. Who's the best quarterback right now in the NFC North? And Mike Tannenbaum responded with Jordan Love. What NFL universe is Mike Tannenbaum? Now, I don't know this guy, but I do know that he used to be a GM in the NFL. Huh? You've got Kirk Cousins, who, despite the fact that I call him average all the time, is a veteran presence who's performed average throughout his whole career, but last year he performed above average. I don't get how you put Jordan Love with no real resume over Kirk Cousins. And if you look at just last year, Jared Goff was one of the hottest quarterbacks in the NFL. How on this planet does Mike Tannenbaum put, oh my God, how, I know it's a hot take, right? So it's supposed to get people like myself all fired up about it. But bro, at least lend something to this take that you have that can lead me to believe that this kid, something that you've seen on tape, something other than the fact that he's got some good young wide receivers around him and maybe arguably the best coach in the conference, which that is really up for debate. I don't know that that's a very like clear-cut thing, but whatever. Jordan Love is not better than Kirk Cousins. He's definitely not better than Jared Goff. And he doesn't have, and for all that Justin Fields lack, he doesn't have the same skill set that Justin Fields has. Now that Justin Fields has weapons around him, I think you're going to see that he's not nearly the caliber of quarterback as Justin Fields. Jordan Love is unproven. It's his first year. I don't know what Mike Tannenbaum had on the agenda other than jumping on the Jordan Love train. That's not a take that I can respect. Like, how? How can you say that with a straight face and defend that? I can't with you, Mike. I'm sorry, I don't know you, but this was a bad take. This isn't good. Okay, and then lastly, I'm gonna wrap it up with Minnesota. Sorry, this episode, guys, I am not breaking it up by team. We're just talking running backs mainly, and these couple other topics that I wanted to toss in there. Minnesota, there was a quote by Alexander Mattson. Alexander Mattson said, "I'm pretty happy, to say the least. He's definitely one of those guys that can just terrorize a division. To see him gone for us is kind of like a breath of fresh air." Now, I wonder who Alexander Mattson was talking about. We all know who he's talking about. Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has been long gone, and all the NFL has done is made a big deal about him going to the Jets. But the even bigger deal is he is no longer terrorizing the NFC North. I've said this a bunch of times. I'm going to say it some more. I'm glad someone was being honest when asked about Aaron Rodgers, because people pretend like Aaron Rodgers was not some kind of like boogeyman. I think his record against Minnesota is like 17-11-1. He's 18-8 against the Lions. He's like 25-4 or 25-5 against the Chicago Bears. Dude, nobody wanted to see him. So I appreciate Mattson coming out and saying, look, I'm happy that he's gone. Peace. Goodbye. It opens up this division. But I feel like that was secretly shade against Jordan Love. He actually says it in the article that he didn't intend he didn't intend to infer anything about the quarterback who is there. He just wants to stay like, yo, I'm glad Aaron Rodgers is going. Not having him, it doesn't really matter who's coming behind him. I just know it ain't him. And I feel good about that too. I'm a Lions fan, so goodbye, Aaron. And I think I'm going to try. I'm going to really, really try. I'm going to try to make this the last episode that I talk about Aaron Rodgers. Never mind. We know that's not going to happen. He's such a figure. He's going to get talked about even if he's in the division or not. All right, guys. Well, that's it. That's all that I got for the show today. I appreciate you making it to this point if you did. And if you didn't, well, then you won't hear this part. If you did stick around and you plan to come back next week, which I hope you do, make sure you've got your bags packed because this is Headed North. I'm D-Tron. Peace. You talking about football?
Yeah, Football NFC North. Let's talk football.